He watched his own funeral from the shadows. It was one of the most unbelievable stories ever heard by a detective. A man who had been declared dead turned up in his own funeral home to watch his family grieve over his coffin. But there was more to the story than met the eye. The year before, this man had been arrested for murdering his wife, and he had done it in the most gruesome way possible. When the police searched the house, they found his wife's body chopped into several pieces and then boiled in acid. The case was sent to court, where he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without parole. The entire town mourned with the victim's family, except for one person, the killer himself. He showed no emotions whatsoever when he heard his sentence. Instead, he broke into a smile. How could anyone be so cold-hearted? Well, that's what made him different from all the other prisoners. The rest hated him and wanted him dead. One day, a letter arrived at the station house. It was from the prisoner, and it read, "I am innocent." The detective who was in charge of the case decided to visit the jail and question the man. "Why did you write that you're innocent?" asked the detective. "Because I am," replied the prisoner. "I didn't kill my wife. I loved her too much. She was the best thing that ever happened to me. Would I have killed her?" The detective felt a chill down his spine. Was this man telling the truth? If he was, then it meant that an innocent man was behind bars, and a guilty one was walking free. "Do you know who killed her?" asked the detective. "No, but I can help you find out," said the man. Now, this wasn't the first time someone had tried to trick him like this. But the detective thought that if this man really was innocent, he would be more worried about himself rather than helping them, so he agreed. What the prisoner told him was nothing short of pure evil. This man hadn't just watched his wife die, he had watched her turn into a corpse. He said that he got home early from work one day and found two men rummaging through his wife's jewelry box. They were his wife's lover and her father, the one who had taught her how to be so manipulative. As soon as the men saw him enter the room, they tried to hide themselves under the bed. But being furious, he dragged them out and tied them up. Then he went to the kitchen to grab a knife and started slashing at them. They begged him to stop, promising they wouldn't hurt his wife. But he didn't listen. Killed both of them, and then he cut their bodies into pieces and threw them away. Then he called the police and reported that he had killed two people. They came to his house and arrested him, but not before he had cleaned up the mess. "And then why did you confess?" asked the detective. "Because I knew they would find evidence against me, and I wanted to protect my son from them." "Now, I hope you find whoever did this and bring him to justice," said the man. Of course, the detective didn't believe him. He thought he was trying to get himself off the hook. But there was no denying that the story was pretty convincing. So he decided to look into it further. His partner laughed when he heard the man's story. "Don't tell me you actually think he didn't kill his wife. Even if he didn't, he definitely helped in chopping the body." But the detective wasn't so sure. He paid another visit to the jail and spoke to the prisoner once again. He wanted to see if the man's story checked out. And this time, he learned something shocking. The prisoner told him about a secret stash of money hidden somewhere in the house, which the actual killer would not know about. When the detective returned home, he immediately drove to the prisoner's house and began searching every nook and corner. Finally, in the false bottom of a shoe rack, he found a plastic bag containing almost $40,000 in cash. Now that was indeed proof that the man was innocent. However, he still had one question. Why would someone want to kill the prisoner's wife? And more importantly, who was that person? He went back to the jail, and after hours of questioning, the prisoner finally caved in. He confessed that his wife was pregnant with another man as child, and that S when he lost it. He couldn't bear the thought of raising someone else's child, and that S when he planned to kill his wife. He waited till late one night, and then he hit her over the head with a vase. After she fell unconscious, he took her to the bedroom and strangled her to death. But he still wasn't done. He took her body to the bathroom and then started cutting her up with a saw. After he finished, he boiled her remains in acid to make sure that no one could identify her. He didn't want to throw her out of the window, because that would have made the place messy and the neighbors would have heard her scream. So he had only one option left. He called his friend, who was also a police officer, and asked him to come over. When his friend arrived, he explained everything to him and also confessed that he had killed 2 other women earlier. The detective was shocked. He couldn't believe that one of their own was involved in such heinous crimes. But he kept quiet and stayed in character. After hearing everything, he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." And then he left. At the station, he called his chief and informed him that they had a mole in the force. He also told him about the 3 murders and the secret stashed money. A massive search was launched throughout the city. After weeks, the police managed to trace the second woman's family. The third one had been missing for so long that they had given up on finding her. They also dug up the prisoner's cell. And lo and behold, they found the same kind of acid that he had used to dissolve his wife's body. Meanwhile, the killer cop had bribed a few inmates to keep an eye on the prisoner. It even placed a bug in his cell so that he could hear everything. He wanted to know what would happen to the prisoner once he was released. But little did he know, the tables had already been turned. One day, the detective visited the prisoner and asked him to come out of the cell. He told him that the trial had reached a deadlock, and there was no way they could prove the prisoner's innocence. "Then I suggest we strike a deal," said the detective. "Tell me who killed your wife and I'll make sure you get a lighter sentence." The prisoner hesitated for a moment, but then he gave in. He told the detective about the dirty cop and how he had helped him kill his wife. The detective was elated. He now had enough evidence to send the killer cop behind bars for life. But there was one thing that bothered him. Why did the cop help the prisoner kill his wife? And what did they both gain from it? Well, it turned out that they had been childhood friends. Back in the day, the prisoner had bullied the cop and stolen his girlfriend. When the cop learned that the prisoner's wife had betrayed him, he thought this was his chance for revenge. That's why he went to the prisoner's house that night. Together, they killed the wife and then shared the spoils. This was revealed during the trial, and both the men were given life sentences. But the detective was not happy with the verdict. He had put his life on the line to gather evidence against the prisoner, but in the end, they had both been convicted. If the prisoner hadn't tricked him into thinking he was innocent, perhaps he wouldn't have gone to jail. What do you think? Should the detective have been more careful, or is he justified in his actions? Share your thoughts below. Also, Mafia has been watching all of your videos and he wants you to know that you are amazing. You should subscribe to his channel and never miss an upload.